but it's important, right? This is life or death. I am cutting open a human, rearranging their insides and putting them back together. Like, you would hope that that took a while to learn. So I think there are a lot of really important lessons that I have learned from being on call in the hospital. And I want to be super transparent. I still get a lot of anxiety about being on call. And part of the impetus for this video was actually trying to recover from my last big on call weekend, which was very busy, and trying to understand kind of where that comes from and what are the feelings that underlie that anxiety and how I manage them, because I think that's something you guys might be interested in knowing. The first thing to know is that you do not have control over what comes in the door and what happens. And you can spend a lot of time worrying about it, which I do, and that's not necessarily advisable, or you can kind of go on with your day. And the people that I look up to who seem to really manage well go live their life, and they recognize that they could be called back to the hospital at any moment, but they don't live there and dwell in this, like, what if I get called now, and what about now, and what about now, and what about now. They just acknowledge that it could happen, but there is a day that they can spend doing other things if they do not get called. And one of the mindset shifts that I have tried to work on with myself is, rather than dwelling on like the worst possible scenario at all times, which is very draining, would be to say, like, what is the best thing that could happen right now? And maybe that is actually what will happen. And what would life or my day look like if I thought about the best outcome? Now, that's not to say that the best outcome is always not being called, but it is to say that we are in charge of how we manage the uncertainty of being on call. Another great lesson that I learned from one of my partners in Kaiser is to really deliberately slow down. I personally get very invested in trying to resolve the feelings that come up when there isn't a plan yet, because somebody is having a crisis. That's why I've been called. And the sooner I can fix the crisis, the sooner we can all relax and return to a state of calm and well being. That generates a sense of like urgency and emergency. Now, there is usually some urgency and emergency to the situation, but it's never as acute as it feels in my body, because the truth is, save a very few scenarios, and they do exist, but 80% of the time, 90% of the time, it can wait half an hour or 45 minutes or an hour for you to really relax, take a deep breath, go through the chart, go through the imaging, phone a friend if you need help. Like, think about the plan, think about your backup plan if your first plan fails. Think about the history of the patient. Think about all of the little details that actually really matter, because when you rush, you skip that. And I can think of one case in particular where I was just in a real hurry to get this patient to the operating room and fix the problem as soon as possible. And I thought I knew exactly what the problem was, but I didn't. And if I had spent an extra 20 minutes or 30 minutes really digging in to his history and what had happened before he got to my hospital, what had happened in the last 6 months, 12 months, I might have really approached that case differently, and it might have had a much better outcome. So, ultimately that patient did okay, and I was able to get him to the place where he needed to be, and he had a reasonably successful procedure. But I was hours into that operation just kicking myself for not paying closer attention, because the 20 minutes could have spent, I spent running around trying to get the operating room ready. Like, I could have used that time better. And that 20 minutes wouldn't have made a difference in his clinical outcome from a urgency standpoint. Like, getting him to the operating room 20 minutes faster didn't help him. Getting him to the operating room 20 minutes later with a much more crystal clear understanding of the problem, that might have helped him much more than rushing to get there. And one of my partners from my former job was really good about this. Like, she was never flustered, or at least she never acted flustered or flummoxed. Like, she would just sit there and go through everything and ask questions and call another partner and ask for help or ask for their perspective and opinion. And I always respected how deliberate and thoughtful she was, even at 1 a.m. when all you want to do is just get the thing done and go back home and go to bed. Like, she never did that. She never rushed. And so going slow, taking your time, managing your own feelings, like, that is a really important lesson that I am clearly still learning, but it's a good one. We learn in residency, always load the boat. And what that means is get help, right? If the ship is sinking, you never want to go down on that ship by yourself. If it's going to go down, you want to go down with help, with partners, friends, colleagues, and you never want to be the only one on a sinking ship. The surgeons and the physicians, even that I respect the most, are the first ones to ask for a second opinion, a third opinion, another perspective. They are not so convinced that they know best that they aren't open to shopping it around and, knocking on someone's door and saying, "Hey, can you look at this for a minute? I want to know what you think." And when you have a sick patient or you have somebody who is not doing well, that becomes doubly important, because you never want to be the only one with a perspective on an issue. You want as many thoughts and solutions and problem solving, brainstorming capacity as you can get, because that patient is depending on you. So have the humility, have the grace, and the patient-centered orientation to get help. And most people are super willing to just phone a friend or provide that opinion and come by and help. And I think when you're in academic training, it gets to be a burden. Every new consult is like one more thing you have to do, and one more box to check, and one more note to write, and patient to see, and phone call to make. But by the time you evolve into a staff physician, attending physician, faculty position, that is one of your colleagues, your peers, asking for your help. And that is a patient who would benefit from your opinion. And I can't tell you how many times I have had a partner or a colleague from another discipline say, what if we tried this? Or have you thought about that? In fact, I had a patient just recently who, we had a couple of options about how to treat the blockage in the artery in her leg. And the cardiology team came up to me and said, Dr. Lilly, I really don't think that this open surgical option is a good idea. I really don't think she's going to do very well with this. And I completely agreed with that. But it was really great to be able to go to the patient and say, we've had a multidisciplinary conversation about your case. This team agrees. I agree. Technically, it's an option, but it's not your best option. And when you have multiple perspectives that way, the patient does better and they have more confidence in the team. And we all really get to provide that highest level of care to that patient. And I actually think we'll talk about her in another video, because instead of open surgery, we did a brand new procedure called a detour. And I'm excited to tell you about that. So stay tuned for that in another video. The next thing I would say is, the hospital is kind of a fun place. You don't want to be there all the time, but you could be there all the time if you really had to be. So there are showers. There are those, cute blue socks with the little sticky things on the bottom. So like, if you get your socks wet, you can always have a new pair. There are little toothbrushes and toothpaste in the patient supply room. There are terrible for you nutritionally snacks available in the nutrition area. Like, the hospital is its own ecosystem, and everything that's available for a patient can, in a pinch, be available to you too as a doctor. And while I don't advocate for living out of the hospital, there is always a way to be a little more comfortable. And if you have to be there overnight, if you have to be there for days on end, which is uncommon but does happen, by all means, get a fresh pair of scrubs, get a fresh pair of socks. That will do so much for your sense of like refreshment. I can't even tell you what a fresh pair of scrubs and socks will do. When I was on 24-hour call and was overnight and had to be there the next day, because 24 really meant 30 or 36, I would always bring a fresh pair of my own socks and a new pair of scrubs. And it's not quite the same as 6 hours of sleep. It's not even close. But it is actually super refreshing to just like have a clean pair of socks and underwear and scrubs on, and it's a cheat code for feeling a little bit better after a really long night. We should talk a little bit about the work-life balance question, or how many hours do you really work, and do you have a life? Surgery is a demanding profession, and there is a reason that I now have a part-time surgical job instead of a full-time one. And for me, that has been a balance that I have had to learn, and I'm still deciding whether part-time is okay. Maybe it should be full-time, or maybe it should be no time. I don't know yet. That is an ongoing discussion for me in my own life, but I will say that at least as we have constructed our workforce in the United States, surgery is a big time sink, and it does require a lot of your energy and investment, and it's sometimes pretty inconvenient to be up in the middle of the night or on call for 3 days at a stretch, or 4 or 5 days at a stretch, 7 days at a stretch I've done. And it's tough. And I signed up for it. Okay, like, no pity party for me. This was a choice and I made it willingly. But I will say that when you are 20 and you make that choice, you don't have any way of understanding what that will feel like when you're 35, when you're 45. And it does evolve, and you become a different body, able to manage that sleeplessness and that stress differently. And that's okay. But yeah, it is demanding. And there are nights where I don't sleep. And there are times where I get called away from family dinner or events that I had planned to attend to go help a colleague, or especially to go help a patient. So that's real. And in residency, we now have the work hour restrictions, which limit the number of hours a resident can work per week to 80 hours on average. And even that is a lot. It used to be much higher, right? On average, we think probably residents were spending 120 hours a week in the hospital. They were called residents because they lived there. Like, that was how the system was designed. It was a dormitory attached to the hospital. And the people who created that system intended it to be that way. My dad, who's a surgeon, has a great joke that the worst part about being on call every other night is that you miss half the cases, half the good cases. And that was kind of the mentality from, the old generation of surgeons. And it's true that you got a lot of experience really quickly and you mastered surgery. It's also true that many of the people in that generation are on their fourth marriage, and their kids don't always talk to them, and they paid a lot of other kinds of prices for those choices. But are they excellent technical surgeons? You bet. You bet they are. So there is a balance between getting in the reps, getting in the time and experience and energy that it takes to really master this craft. Like those 10,000 hours that Malcolm Gladwell talks about, those have to come from somewhere. You have to get them in. And, my surgical training has taken me over a decade. It's a long time to do that, but it's important, right? This is life or death. I am cutting open a human, rearranging their insides and putting them back together. Like, you would hope that that took a while to learn. You would hope that that took a lot of repetition and practice and studying to get right, because that's a big freaking deal. So yeah, but the price for doing it is high, and emergencies happen day or night, and you have to go in and manage them. That is a cost. And eventually, over time, I do think it wears on us. It wears on our bodies. Surgeons have higher rates of sort of pain and workplace injury and ergonomic issues than other physicians. And like, it's a real thing. We are all trying to learn how to balance that out for ourselves. For some people, it is going to be early retirement. For other people, it is a part-time practice. For some people, it doesn't phase them and they are happy to continue a full-time surgical practice. And that's awesome. Like, whatever works for you. And I really believe that just because you were told that it has to be a certain way, it has to be a full-time job, and it has to be on call all the time, and it has to be this and it has to be that, I encourage you to challenge that if you are interested in a career in surgery or in medicine in general. We are doing a lot of different models now. I did travel doctoring for a while, or locum tenens. I worked 2 weeks a month. I flew or drove out to a location where I would spend 7 or 10 days at a time, and I would be on call for the facility. And then I came home. And so that was half time, but it paid me almost a full-time salary. And, the downsides were the travel, living in a motel, really didn't have friends or family in the area. Not a lot to do there other than be on call and go to the gym. But, it gave me 2 weeks of freedom of the rest of the month where I could be with my family and be here and do other things, write my book, do all kinds of other things. So there are a lot of different models now. Pick what works for you. And if what you're currently doing isn't working, try to understand what could be done differently. How could you make it work? Because for some people, there are small shifts that can make their job much more tolerable. The last thing is that those work hours stop after your residency ends. So I was restricted to the 80 hours, in most of my training, but as an attending now, that's no longer a restriction for me. It is not like the airline industry, right? There is no mandate for me to go home and sleep for 12 hours before coming back to do an operation. And I have patients who ask me, did you get a good night's sleep last night? And most of the time I am able to answer yes. But truthfully, there are nights where I don't sleep well because I'm on call and either get woken up or have to come in and operate. And I try to be super honest with patients, especially if I am not feeling my best, and say, I was up all night. I'm not sure that this is like the best time for us to do this semi-elective procedure. Would you like to reschedule, or would you like for me to, keep you on the schedule because you took time away from work and you took time with your family and somebody flew in from out of town to help take care of you after surgery? It is absolutely their choice to have the operation today. I will do what I can to make it safe. And typically that looks like having my partner come in and help and make sure that we're all, on the same page and things are going well. But I give patients the option, if I have been up all night operating, to postpone or reschedule an operation. The last thing that I will say about being on call and being tired is that you will be tempted to make a bad decision because you're tired and you don't want to get up. You will be tempted to make a bad decision because it's pretty inconvenient for you to go look at the imaging or to go see the patient or to do whatever it is that somebody is asking you to do at 2 o'clock in the morning when you are in bed. Make decisions that you will be proud of tomorrow. Like, make decisions that you can live with if the worst thing were to happen. And, everybody wants to say, that would never be me. I would always do the right thing for the patient at all times. You're human. You will get tired, you will get cranky, and you will start to get a little arrogant about what is possible and what you can get away with from the comfort of your own bed or your call room. Even as a resident, right? You're still in the hospital. It's not that hard to go upstairs and see the patient. You're there, but you still get tempted to just turn over, put the phone down, ignore the text message, or call them back and say, it'll be fine, we'll deal with it in the morning. And if you can't sleep for the next 5 minutes because you're thinking about, should I go see that patient? Maybe I should go see that patient. Maybe that's actually something serious. Maybe that nurse was trying to tell me something and they're too scared to ask again a second time. Just go see the patient. Get up, open up your computer, log in and look at the pictures, the CT scan, the x-ray, whatever it is. And if you are still not able to triage that in your brain and go back to sleep immediately, get in your car, go see your patient in the hospital, go do what it takes to be proud of that decision in the light of day when you are well rested, because you will not get away with the seat of your pants, turn over and ignore the thing forever. Someday you will get caught with your pants down and somebody will have a bad outcome because you didn't do the right thing. And you never want that to be, you never want that to be just out of laziness. We were all going to make mistakes. I have made mistakes. I will make more. I had coffee with a surgeon once who told me a philosophy that really stuck with me. And she said, we're all going to make mistakes, but I have a rule. I have two rules. And she said, I never want to make the same mistake again. And I never want to make a mistake out of laziness. And I think if you can live with that, right? If you can just say, it's not a mistake I've made before, and I did everything I was supposed to do in terms of getting up and going to see the patient and doing the right thing, then mistakes happen, and you're human and it will happen to you too, but at least you can live with it. Maybe, it's harder to live with yourself if you were cutting corners, if you were rushing, if you were not doing your best. So make decisions in the middle of the night that you'll be proud of the next day. I think people get used to this idea that once you have finished your training and you are an attending surgeon, like you are the boss and you are in charge, and that's cool. But what I will say is the other people in your team, in your hospital, will make or break your experience and your quality of life. So that's your nurses, your pharmacists, your rad techs, your scrub techs in the operating room, your NPs and PAs. Like there are all kinds of people in this hospital, in your environment, who will either make your life a lot easier or a lot harder. They can wake you up once at night with 3 questions, or they could wake you up 3 separate times with each individual question one at a time. And you would be amazed that people with a bad attitude seem to get woken up a lot more, and people with a bit of a chip on their shoulder don't get as much help from the staff. But if you are kind to people, if you recognize their humanity and you don't lord over the hierarchy, then you'll get a lot of help and a lot of support. And they are some of the most rewarding and fulfilling relationships that I have in the hospital. So never be so proud that you can't, have a meal with your nurse or the anesthetist or your techs, right? Like these are the people who run the hospital. I try to know the environmental services staff by name because I'm usually in the office late, and it's the same people who come and empty the trash every night. And before I left my job in Sacramento, one of them came by and made me food and gave me a hug, and everybody is working hard to take care of patients, and they don't all have MD after their name, and that's okay. Everybody is still showing up to do the work and take care of these patients who need us. And your job will be so much more fulfilling if you take the time to get to know those people and make them a part of your day. That's one more moment of connection, and truly it makes your job much easier when everybody is trying to be helpful and will go out of their way to help you. So never ignore those relationships with everybody on the team. Get to know them, write down their names, and it makes a huge difference to your quality of life and your success in the hospital. So I've been doing this now for a little over 5 years since I finished training, and I'll tell you, it is a hard job, but it is really rewarding. It has taken me a little time to figure out how to make it mine. So if you were going to ask me, what advice would you give somebody who is looking to get into surgery or looking to get into medicine? Few things I would say. One, relationships will make or break your whole perspective on your career and in the place that you work. So, when you think about picking a job, pick it for the people. Don't pick it for the salary number. Don't pick it for the location. Don't pick it for the shiny toys that they have. Pick it for your people. And maybe that's your family. You're picking it because it allows you to be close to the people who matter most to you. Great. That's a good reason. But also pick the people in the location, right? Pick your partners. Pick the institution that has a philosophy that resonates with yours, values that are congruent with yours. That's a really big deal and something I don't think enough people really consider or prioritize. Number 2, if it is not working for you, fix it. Figure out a way to change how you do your job so that it works for you and you can come back to the part that is rewarding, because it's too important for you to be a grumpy ass all the time. This is too big a deal for you to hate what you do. People's lives are at stake and they are at their most vulnerable. And if you cannot show up as the best version of yourself most of the time, you won't show up that way all the time. It's okay. But if you cannot be the best version of yourself at all in your job, you need to make a change, because your patients deserve better and you deserve better than that. So this is kind of what I have come up with, after a few years reflecting on my surgical career. If you want to know more about this, let me know in the comments below. If this is interesting to you and you want more content like this, please like or share it and subscribe to the channel, and we can do more videos like this. So if you want another peek behind the curtain, want to know what it's like life as a surgeon, please let me know and we will do more of this. All right. In the meantime, take good care.